Good evening. I'm Robin Kaler, Associate Chancellor for Public Affairs here at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. Thank you to the University of Illinois Alumni Association and UIAA President Jen Delavu for sponsoring this latest installment of their ongoing speaker series. And of course, thank you all for taking the time to join us wherever in the world you might be. Before we start, I want to say a special thank you and hello to a few folks who were planning to be with us tonight. UIAA board members, Suzanne Dawson, Jan-Suk Enlow, Bill Forsythe, my buddy Jim Schlueter, as well as my colleague, Associate Vice Chancellor for Advancement, Dale Wright. So the ground rules for tonight are very simple. It will be entirely a conversation with Chancellor Jones, guided by some questions I've brought along to get us started, as well as those that you decide to ask along the way. If you have a question for the Chancellor, please use the Q&A function on your Zoom screen, not the chat function, so that I can actually see the question and make sure that I get to you as quickly as possible. We will try to get to as many of your questions as we can, and I apologize in advance if we don't get to all of them. With all of that said, let's go ahead and get started. It is my great pleasure to introduce and welcome our guest of honor this evening, Robert Jones, the 10th Chancellor of the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, who is just beginning his 6th year on the job. Robert, welcome to the conversation and thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know you're actually up in Chicago for some meetings, so I hope the internet connection at the Alumni Center is ready for us. We have a lot to get through tonight. So before we get started though, I do want to give you a little bit of time to just, as you always fondly like to say, pre-ramble and just offer any opening thoughts you'd like to share.
Well, let me start by saying, first of all, good evening, everyone. It is truly an honor and a pleasure to have the opportunity to participate in this UIAA conversation. And we are always just, first of all, so grateful for all of you taking time out of your busy schedules. We know this is a busy time of year for all. To participate in this webinar this evening, but also just can't say enough about how we really look forward to each and every opportunity to have a chance to converse, have a conversation, to inform, and for you to ask questions of the university administration. So we're very, very pleased with that. I think you all know we're more than 22 months now into this thing called COVID-19. I know we are all beset and beleaguered. We're tired of it. But this university, your university, has not given up. We have not lost a step during this crisis. In fact, our momentum in many ways has increased, and we'll be talking a little bit about that tonight as well. But there's also a lot of good news to talk about as well. There's a lot going on at this university, notwithstanding the pandemic, notwithstanding the Omicron variant that I just got off a call for 45 minutes discussing that and how we're going to beat that to the ground as well. So it's my great honor to be with you this evening, and we hope to get through as many of your questions, as Robin has said, as possible. And just thank you for being with us.
Excellent, thank you. Chancellor, you gave your annual State of the University just a couple of weeks ago. And in it, you said you saw a university that was optimistic about the future, even as we continue to work through COVID-19. I'd like to ask you about a few of the examples you discussed as reasons for that optimism. Let's start with our students. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this fall's class?
Well, I can tell you it was very, very exciting to me as the chancellor of this university to welcome our students back during that welcome week and the convocation week. And I was just really so thrilled to see how enthusiastic they were to be back on campus. You could tell the students that were freshmen last year who are sophomores this year, because they have a tendency to travel in groups of 3 or 4, and they're always just so excited to be face to face. You can tell them apart from the rest of the group or the rest of the crowd. And we know that they missed a lot last year not being in person, and you can tell they're really excited to have this opportunity to really experience what a university experience is all about. And I think it's important that, as I said before, we did not allow the COVID-19 to diminish our response. And this fall, it has not diminished the interest in the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. Some of you probably have heard this before, but we welcome 8,303 first-year students to this university, and nearly 600, that was about 600 more than we welcome at the high point of our first-year class, which was back in 2019. Their arrival did bring the total enrollment of this university to an all-time high, which is 57,257. And if you have trouble remembering that number, just remember 57,257. So that's the way I remember it. So 57257. That is the world-class record enrollment for this university, largest class in the history of the university. And I remind you, the university's enrollment when I came here and started the first day, September 26th of 2016, it was roughly about 45,000 students. So you can do the math on that. More than a 12,000 student increase in the last 5 years. And so we're very, very excited about this record enrollment, and very, very excited about how the enrollment continues to grow and how the interest in Illinois education is at an all-time high.
And we do things at scale at Illinois. We like to say that we are able to do things at scale, but we also talk a lot about quality. And this class is no different, right? They're not just big, but the profile of the class is a pretty important reason to celebrate too, isn't it?
It really is an amazing class, and we don't have to talk about ACT scores since we don't worry about those during COVID, but even we know that still remains very high for those that chose to submit them. But the thing that we're very proud of is that 1 in 5 of those students come from underrepresented populations that we care greatly about, that are a core part of our goal to diversify the university. Another component of that diversity is that 1 in 5 are first generation college students. They're the first in their family to attend a university. And so this is a generation of very diverse students who come from all walks of life. And we're also very, very pleased to see that many of them are the recipients of the Illinois Commitment Scholarship Program that we started a little bit more than 3 years ago. And so that appears to be having an impact on the profile and the quality of these students as well.
Excellent. And for those who may not be familiar with the Illinois Commitment Program, can you talk a little bit about what that is, why you established it, and what it does?
Well, the Illinois Commitment Program is pretty straightforward, but it does take a little bit of explanation. The Illinois Commitment Program is for any student from a family of $67,100 a year or less will get free tuition and fees at this university for 4 years if you come in as a first-year student, and you get 3 years if you come in as a transfer student. And it was launched primarily because we began to do some data analytics, and it became very clear that there was a fairly large cohort of students who never bothered to apply to Illinois because their perception was sticker shock, if you will. Why apply if I know I can't afford it? They weren't necessarily concerned that they wouldn't get in. It was, even if I get in, I know I can't afford it, so why even bother to apply? And so we just decided that it was time to do something about that, because it was very, very clear that sticker shock was preventing students from even thinking about applying to Illinois. And so this program really was supposed to be the wake-up call. And Robin will tell you, as I've said many, many times, we wanted to move the paradigm from being one where students were saying to us, well, I'm not going to, I can't afford it, so I'm not going to apply, to being where they would have to say to themselves, my God, with the Illinois commitment, I cannot afford not to apply to Illinois. And we're starting to see the fruits of our labor in terms of the number of students. The first couple of years of this program, is in its 3rd year now. More than a third of the first year students received the Illinois commitment. And at this juncture, with the record enrollment that we have this year, we're very, very proud of the fact that there is more than 5,500 of our students who are recipients of the Illinois commitment. And we call it the Illinois commitment because we're trying to send the message that we're very clear providing a world-class education at an affordable price, and access and affordability are one of the things that we care greatly about.
Excellent. And we did have a question from Lyle Orwig wanting to know about the breakdown by college. But Lyle, I'm going to put in the chat here the link to our Division of Management information. If you just go to that, dmi.illinois.edu, you could spend hours finding all kinds of amazing data about our students. It will tell you where they're from, broken down by county in Illinois, by state in the US, by country, all sorts of things. So if you go to dmi.illinois.edu and click on class profile 2021, you can see all of that stuff. So very fun. Chancellor, it's been also a really amazing time for giving at Illinois, and Illinois commitment has been a big component of our fundraising efforts. Can you talk a little bit about where the With Illinois campaign stands today, and why you're excited even during the middle of a pandemic about fundraising?
Well, you know, this is one of my favorite topics. So Robin, you'll have to stop me if I go on too long. But I am very, very proud of what we've been able to achieve. This is one of the shining examples of what this university has been able to achieve, notwithstanding the pandemic. I think you all remember that about almost 4 years ago, we set out with the most ambitious fundraising goal in the history of the university, and that was to raise $2.25 billion. And we decided that we would do it differently than what we've done. We had a whole different launch of the campaign. Rather than having a single university system campaign, each campus had its own campaign, so that you could really take advantage of telling that university story to grateful alums. And I can tell you it worked beautifully because we surpassed our goal 18 months ahead of schedule. Remember, it's the first week in March of this year when Barry called me to tell me that we have exceeded that $2.25 billion goal. And you have to look at that again in the context that was achieved in the middle of a pandemic. And so I think it speaks volumes to the commitment that donors like yourselves and supporters of the university who made all of this possible, that you really believe in our mission, you are supportive in the direction that we're going in. And I can tell you a lot of credit goes to Barry Benson and his entire team, from the way that they perceived how we would approach the campaign this year with the framing of With Illinois, and with the notion that with Illinois, we can do anything. We can change the world. We can continue to produce amazing students who are going to go out and change the world. And that gravitated well, I think, with our alumni base and our donor base. And I just want to thank Barry and his entire team for just really outstanding work and producing the great sense of connection back to our alums that allowed us to reach this $2.25 billion goal back in March. And the last time I checked, we were well past 2.4 billion. And Barry and I we're just kind of guesstimating how far we will go. Don't be surprised if we don't meet or exceed $2.75 billion. So I'm sorry. Yes, it really would be a major accomplishment for us to reach or exceed that goal. And we know that with you, with Illinois, we can change the world. And we will continue to prioritize support for scholarships, support for hiring the best and the brightest faculty, and support for making sure our students have an amazing learning, living experience while they're here on a campus. And of course, some of this support is for capital projects. We've had the great opportunity to I've cut more ribbons in this academic semester than I have, I think, in my entire academic life. We did 3, I think, on one day and 2 the next week. And so we've been running around campus with these giant 2-foot long scissors, holding them appropriately the way they taught you in kindergarten, by the way. And it's just been a remarkable reminder of the role of philanthropy in advancing the mission of this university. And on behalf of the entire university community, I can't say anything other than thank you, thank you, thank you. Your generosity and your trusting commitment has been absolutely amazing. And we could not be more excited about where we are and where we are going in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you. We've gotten a couple of questions about the status of the native imagery, Chief Illiniwek issues as they currently stand. Can you talk a little bit about what the leadership's doing to resolve all of those issues surrounding that?
Well, I think you probably would acknowledge that human nature is such is that resolution means that you make incremental progress in helping us to move beyond the inappropriate Native American imagery that is very, very troubling to many people in our community. We started out with the critical conversation, whereas my understanding was one of the first times we tried to bring people from all aspects or all parts of the issue to have a conversation about Native American imagery. And then we, after that went so well, we had more than, I think it was more than 240 people that showed up for that critical conversation. That led to me appointing a commission. Again, you know, I'm very big on making sure all voices are heard. So we had representation from all sides of this issue. And the commission came up with a set of recommendations that we actually then moved to discussion for an implementation group. And that group provided a framework for moving us forward. And at this juncture, where we are, we have really, last month, I charged a Native American Representation Reciprocity Initiative Steering Committee, who's going to be implementing the plans for how do you implement the commission's recommendation. This steering committee will be doing a whole suite of work from capturing and codifying the history regarding the so-called chief, and how do we help people understand why that may have been acceptable or allowed at one point in our history, and why it's very, very problematic now. How do we create new traditions to move us beyond that tradition that was with us for decades, 70, 80 plus years? And then how do we establish new traditions? There's going to be a new tradition subcommittee that's going to be working with the Alumni Association and student groups to try to create new traditions to move us beyond this historic one that involved Native American imagery. And just how do we move forward to really, truly honoring Native people? And, you know, we have this land acknowledgement statement that we read before most major face-to-face events. And it provides some context for why we need to think differently about how we honor Native people. And so we've done all of that, and we will be considering a way to vet and decide the issue about mascots, because that's one that's been hanging out there for quite some time. But we've also done many other proactive things. We have we've hired the first person that's the Associate Vice Chancellor for Native Affairs and Special Advisor to me, Professor Jackie Thompson Rand. And we're very, very excited to have her. She's only been on campus a very short time. She is starting to make a significant difference in how we think about these issues and how we truly honor Native American heritage and culture. And I remind you, one of the things we did last year, and we are going to be working on the next wave of that, we have created a situation where Native students from any tribal nation can apply to the University of Illinois and pay resident tuition, because Native people don't really know the statehood was not their thing. They didn't create these boundary lines called states. And so we thought it was very, very appropriate that we remove that barrier and open up an opportunity for Native American students from more than 240 tribes to come and study at Illinois. And we're very, very excited about that.
Thank you. We are starting to get more questions from the audience. So I do want to remind folks, please put your question in the Q&A as opposed to the chat so we don't miss it. But Bernie, I do see your question. Bernie is asking that some years ago we were losing faculty due to higher salaries elsewhere. Have we successfully addressed that issue? So what are we doing on faculty retention?
Well, I can tell you the recruitment and retention of faculty always has to be our #1 criteria. I think the period during which we lost most of the faculty that Bernie is referring to was during the 2 years of the budget crisis, which I think was mostly 2016 and 2015. And it was the first time we have lost that number of people. The first time we've ever had that many of retention offers that we had to put in place to try to keep people. And a lot of places took advantage of the fact that they knew that we had lost more than $287 million off our base budget. And it wasn't just a one-time event, it went on for 2 years. And so we were losing people because people started to poach our best and our brightest, or at least they tried. There were many that we were able to retain, but we lost some. And so what we've tried to do is a couple of things, and that is to be able to respond using all forms of resources. One of the things, we partnered with the system to create the President's Distinguished Faculty Award, which has allowed us to hire some of the best and the brightest people and have a more competitive startup package. We've tried to use a lot of our own internal resources to recruit and to retain the best and the brightest people. But pay and salary equity is a #1 thing for us. And I think you may recall that we weren't able to give pay raises, I think maybe the first year of the pandemic, but I remind you, we didn't furlough anyone. We didn't lay people off. We kept people employed all the way through the end of the first academic year. And then we put it in place a voluntary retirement program to allow us to capture some of that cost so that we can reinvest it in our faculty and our staff and in our students, I might add. So it's something that we care greatly about and is going to be part of our legislative request. In fact, the biggest part of our larger component of our legislative request this year is to hopefully get money to allow us to retain and to appropriately pay our faculty and staff a salary that's worthy of the excellence that they bring to the table.
Very good. And now we move to the crystal ball portion of the evening. We've got 2 questions in this area. First, what do you think our chances are of going to the NCAA tournament this year? I assume that means in basketball, men's basketball.
Yeah. I'm going to make a prediction. I think they're going to be outstanding. I really do believe that because we are very, very pleased with not only just basketball, but, we're very, very pleased with Coach Bielema's first year to win 5 games, first year out, and come very close to winning another 2 to 3 games that could have gone either way. And so it's a very strong start, and very, very pleased with how our football program, we would have loved to have gone to a bowl game, came close, but this is not horseshoes, it's football. So, but we're very, very proud of that first season. And so I can tell you, given what I've seen, and I think I've only missed a couple of games since the first tip-off for this season with our men's basketball program, We are definitely going to, I think, be in the NCAA once again. And I predict we will win the Big Ten once again. And then the field is wide open from there. So stay tuned. We're very, very excited with Coach Underwood and our players. The quality of play is just really, I know maybe some of you were at the game this past Saturday. Didn't quite turn out the way we want, but it was close. We were in there, but the energy in that stadium and State Farm Center was just absolutely amazing. I've never experienced it so loud and just filled with so much excitement. So we're very, very proud of all of our student athletes, and we will continue to put in excellent showing across the board. I think some of you know our volleyball team made it to the Sweet 16. We were very, very excited about that. And we've got a lot to be proud of, both in the classroom and out of the classroom and on the field and the court of competition. So we're just representing excellence across the board, and we're very, very happy about that.
And someone's asking about Coach Fahey and the women's basketball team. Feel good about their prospects for having a good year?
I think they're going to have a good year. I haven't quite had the opportunity with travel to make it to a game, but that's on my list here pretty soon. I'm very excited about their probability of having a very competitive season as well.
And while we're on the subject of sports, it was pretty cool to see last week one of our soccer players who's graduating in December saved a life recently. I don't know if you got a chance to see that, but she administered CPR to someone at a construction site who had been electrocuted or something, I think. Is that?
I know. I didn't get a chance to read the whole story, but my God, that's just another example of how our students are well prepared to step up and just be amazing citizens. In this case, if I remember correctly, one police officer was doing CPR on one victim, and the other person was just lying there, I think, Robin. And our student just stepped up, and I don't think she had used her training before, but it all kind of kicked in. And so I know that person and their families are gratified as much as we are. So amazing young woman who saved a life, and we couldn't be more proud.
And apparently even was able then to translate, realized that the folks who needed help were native Spanish speakers, and the police officer was not a Spanish speaker and was able to help the two communicate. So pretty amazing. And the Urbana Fire Department gave her an award last week. So that was pretty exciting to see.
Very exciting.
Yeah. So again, though, we were still in the crystal ball area. So we have a question from Sultan asking, as we look on to the coming decade, what issues are keeping you up at night? Does climate change make that list?
Well,
everything makes that list, doesn't it?
These days, there's a lot on the list, and it doesn't seem to be a lot of room to eliminate some things, but make more room for new things. But we're very big into sustainability. Some of you may not be aware that my research for more than 34 and a half years focused on the impact of global climate change on production of cereal crops, mainly maize, corn, and wheat, those kinds of crops. And so it's something that I care greatly about, because I became interested because it became very clear that if we didn't mitigate climate change, and I personally think we got started with some of our mitigation strategies far too later than we should have, but it's absolutely critical. This is no joke. You're already starting to see some impact on it across the world. So that is of great concern, and we're trying to do our best with our part with our sustainability initiatives to reduce our carbon footprint to net zero by 2050, and we're making some significant progress in that regard. So that keeps me up some nights, and then the other nights is continuing to manage COVID-19, and the information about the Omicron variant, for example, is still somewhat mixed. And so it is, we have to be concerned about it, but we're very, very fortunate to have very high level of vaccination. And we have that thing that we call the test, the saliva-based test that has allowed us to stay safe thus far. And as we think about how we will move through the rest of this academic year, we will continue to urge people that are unvaccinated, you've got to get vaccinated and become what the experts now call fully vaccinated. And that's 2 doses of whichever the approved vaccinations are available. But it's becoming very, very clear that a booster is also going to have to be part of the scenario for keeping our community safe in the future, and continuing to do the surveillance testing, and maybe even have to ramp up testing a bit to keep our community safe. The bottom line is we've gotten this far because of 2 fundamental principles, 2 fundamental issues. Number one, we've always been driven by the science and the data. We have a team of experts who knows this stuff inside and out. They're constantly watching what's happening around the country and around the world. And so they feed us the relevant information so that Andreas, myself, and the rest of the team can make timely decisions. And then part of the secret sauce has been some of the most amazing students that ever walked this university, that ever strolled down the quad, anything you want to, however you want to frame it, who have been really responsible and have taken upon themselves to keep themselves safe and others. And so with that combination, and with the semester ending in a few days, we're encouraging students to go home, keep themselves safe, but they will be hearing more from us about what we will be doing in the spring. So keeping this university safe during this pandemic is what keeps me up at night, to be honest with you. It has for 22, 23 months now, and it'll continue until we're on the other side of this thing. But even though it may keep me up, I could not be more proud of what we've done as a university community, and to travel around the country and have people I don't know. You mentioned the word Illinois, or they see the block I, they don't say Idaho anymore. They don't. One guy at Ohio State last week said, "Sir, I don't want to offend you. I can't see the color, but is that Indiana, or is it Illinois, or is it Indiana?" I said, "No, you were right the first time." So we've garnered a lot of recognition for how we've handled this pandemic, but I can tell you that has to be the thing that worries me most at this juncture. Those 2 things.
And I know one other thing that definitely keeps you up at night is safety. And we have a question from KY all the way from China. He says he's tuning in from there, or she, and is wondering how many fellow Asians and Asian American schoolmates and faculty members are doing in terms of safety. And I know safety is an issue for you, for everybody on the campus community right now. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, safety applies to everybody in the community. We're very, very proud to have almost more than 10,000 Chinese students back on campus this year after a slight decline during COVID. And we're just really just proud to have everybody up back on campus and following protocol in terms of mask wearing in class and doing the things that they're supposed to do on campus. Even though we don't mandate mask wearing outside, our students are very serious about this. And the biggest source of concern at this juncture is what happens in congregate settings in some of the off-campus housing, or when people go out and congregate in bars and restaurants and those kinds of things, is what precipitates a lot of the spread. But we're constantly sending messages, and again, constantly reminding people of what they're supposed to do during the pandemic. And, the positivity rates are, for most of this semester, kind of mimic what they were on a percentage basis as last year. A little bit concerned about, as I said, the Omicron variant, but everyone across the university is working hard to make sure that there's no spread. And at this juncture, we're proud to say no spread from in the classroom to the or outside of the classroom to the community. And knock on wood, at this juncture, no serious hospitalizations and no deaths as it relates to COVID-19. And safety and keep everybody safe has always been our top priority.
And we have a couple of kinds of safety. In addition to COVID, we know there has been an increase in gun violence all across the nation. Can you talk a little bit about what the university is doing with the community to keep us safe from that sort of crime and violence?
Yeah, this is the thing that really is quite concerning, because in many ways it's much more difficult for us to try to manage this than it is to manage COVID-19 or many of the other challenges that we have to contend with. But one of the things that I've made very, very clear to the leadership of Urbana-Champaign, Champaign County, we got through COVID last year because we have very good working relationships with the mayors and the city managers and the county exec. And we've had to step up to the plate once again in order to keep our community safe. Because I remind each and every one of you that we're anchoring this university, but what happens in Urbana-Champaign and Savoy, our destinies are inextricably linked. What happens out in our community ultimately is going to impact the university. We really became very serious when there was some spillover from some of this violence that wasn't directed at the perpetrators, but was retaliation against family members. And, so it has had a direct impact on the university in terms of some of our staff members being injured, and one person, if I remember correctly, was killed, who worked in our dining service. So it really, there's no escaping it, and we trying to do our part. I think you also may be aware that Champaign is down by more than 40 police officers, and because of that, we've have had to quietly step in to kind of fill that void, to help Champaign Police Department out, help Urbana out when we can. We've stepped up policing along Green Street. We've installed surveillance cameras. We've installed license plate readers. And folks, this is what we think is the best thing that we can do at this juncture, is to try to do everything that would be a deterrent for that criminal, deadly kind of behavior to encroach upon our campus. And we're concerned about the broader community as well. And that's why we're trying to help our local police department do a better job of patrolling, or us taking up some of the patrols next to campus to free them up to deal with the gun violence and other issues. So you're going to be hearing more about this in the next week or two in terms of what we're doing. But I assure you, we've not been sitting out on the sideline and acting as if it's not our problem, because it is our problem. We're one community here, and we take these issues very seriously, because again, our motto is safety, the safety of everybody in our community. And this is another example where we've tried to demonstrate that this is a serious issue, and we're doing our part. Thank Police Chief Alice Carey, and all of our officers for what they've done and what they continue to do each and every day to keep our community safe.
Amen to that. So we have another attendee who says they know the university is a great engine for research, and they'd like to know about some research projects. And of course, during your State of the University, you did talk about some of the big, bold ideas and initiatives that people should expect from us in the next few years. One of those was quantum and information sciences.
Yes.
If you want to say some other ones, that's great, but could you also talk a little bit about why quantum? Why is it so important to our future?
Well, let me just say that's one of the things that we never lost momentum during this COVID-19 crisis. In fact, our sponsored research budget sits at over $750 million. And I predict in the next year or two, we'll get across that 800 million mark. And I can tell you that is huge for a research one land grant university that's only in the, we're just in our fourth year having a medical school, and the whole medical clinical enterprise is just being built out. And to have that level of sponsored research and not have a medical school in place really does signal excellence at this university. Once again, we are at the top of the funding list with NSF. For 6 out of the last 7 years, we have been receiving a little bit more than 1% of the sponsored research budget of the National Science Foundation. And that's huge. And I asked the NSF director my second year here, I didn't ask a question, I actually thanked them for all of their support. And he turned it around and said, no, we should be thanking you for hiring the kind of faculty who could write grants to garner that level of support from one agency. It's basically unheard of. And to do it 6 out of the last 7 years is really unique. And so we continue to innovate and move the agenda with the best and the brightest faculty to do the innovation that drives economic vitality, that creates drugs, that transforms the vitality of the workforce, et cetera. And as Robin said, one of the areas that we're very excited about is this whole quantum area that we're in. And this is more competitive in many ways, and potentially, I think the moon race was very competitive, and it did bring a lot of innovation, create a lot of technologies that we didn't have before. Quantum is going to be that on steroids. It's just going to explode. And whoever wins the quantum race is going to dominate in terms of economics, stature in the world, and economic vitality. And as far as we're concerned, given the following, that runs straight through the state of Illinois and through the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. Some of you may be aware that we approached the governor a couple of years ago, Bob Zimmer and myself from the University of Chicago, and we asked for funding for the Chicago Quantum Exchange. We asked for $100 million, and the governor was so excited, he gave us $200 million. And ask me how many times in a career you ask for one amount and you get double that amount. I don't anticipate that ever happening again, but it shows the importance and that the state and the governor realize how important this quantum revolution is going to be. And whoever wins that race is going to dominate in terms of innovation and economic prowess. And so it's critically important. And not only did we get $200 million for the Chicago Quantum Exchange, we received, some of you may be aware, we signed a partnership, Discovery Accelerator with IBM, which is another $200+ million quantum related. That's everything from quantum cloud computing to AI, to new materials that need to be invented to allow quantum computing to occur. It's also going to be transformative, folks, and we are in it to win it. We are very well positioned with our partners, not only University of Chicago, but the Fermi Lab, Argonne National Laboratory, Northwestern University, and a number of Wisconsin, a number of the places are working together to help facilitate this. And so we're very, very excited about that part of our research and discovery, but we've got things going on in the social sciences and the humanities. All across this university are really very, very highly impactful research and scholarship opportunities that are going to be transformative. And just in case we run out of time and I don't have a chance to mention it, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Carle, Illinois College of Medicine. Again, this is the first engineering-based college of medicine in the world. And folks, it is already putting us on the map. It is already changing how medicine is taught and how medicine is practiced. We will be graduating the first cohort of physicians and medical innovators this spring, and also shortly thereafter receiving full accreditation for our medical school. And starting a medical school is one thing. Our next big idea is, how do you use that medical school to create a different kind of academic health ecosystem or academic health center? You know, most universities that have a medical school, The medical school is the catalyst for your school of dentistry to be linked in, and pharmacy and your public health. All of that creates the traditional academic health center. Well, we don't have all of those entities. And so we have an opportunity to redefine what an academic health center looks like, using technology as the driver for everything that we do to improve health outcomes, individualized medicine, drug discovery, the whole 9 yards, data analytics to individualized medical treatment. So we're very, very excited to be on the cutting edge of the full launch of this medical school, but the impact that's going to have in how we integrate the rest of our health science related disciplines. And it's not just the health sciences. The way that we're looking at it, almost every discipline at this university will find itself in one way or another being integrated into this health sciences ecosystem that I think is going to be truly a game changer for this university and will have tremendous impact on the world. Sorry to go on so long, but those are two of the most compelling things and exciting things. You asked about what keeps me up at night. The excitement for the future, my optimism for the future sometimes keeps me up just lying there, just grateful that I have a chance to witness all of this with you at a place that truly is one of the most remarkable universities in the world.
I hear you. I feel the same way. We do have a question from Kurt. The U of I has won more Nobel Prizes than most other public universities, but we haven't won one in the past several years. Is there anything being done to get us another award? And I think you just answered that question, right?
Well, that's partial, but that's what I've talked about in terms of quantum and medicine and healthcare. But I remind you that there's another one out there that, and I don't want to jinx it, but you probably have heard about the right research effort, realizing increased photosynthetic efficiency. And you can say that I'm biased because I started my career with this objective. How do you increase the photosynthetic efficiency of major agricultural crops so that you could eliminate hunger, feed the world? Well, it was a good thing that I was smart enough to only spend 1 year pursuing that once I started my tenured position at Minnesota, because that was just when a lot of the molecular biological techniques were just coming into vogue. And so it is really, this is the best opportunity since Norman Borlaug spent decades meticulously crossing plants using old-fashioned plant breeding techniques to create the green revolution. This RIGHT project that's being led by Stephen Long in our crop science department, he's in the same, that's where my home tenure is, and Don Ort, who's a world-renowned plant physiologist that I've probably known for 25 years. These guys are leading a team of, I don't know how many people, but it's an international team of scientists and scholars who are increasing the photosynthetic capacity of major crops. It's just not the big agricultural crops. It's not just corn and soybean, but it's cassava, it's cowpea, it's crops that are critically important to developing countries. And I can tell you, when you get people like Gates and NIFA and USDA, all of these entities pouring money in to bring this big idea to fruition, it's pretty exciting, because when I was trying to change photosynthesis, I was trying to approach it by what we call the dark reaction, the reactions that don't require sunlight. And if you would have asked me 25 years ago with anybody, whether it was Stephen Long or Don Ort, we're making progress that's probably going to increase the food production capacity by 25 to 30% by changing what we call the light reactions, the ability of the plant to capture sunlight and convert that into carbohydrates. I would have told you absolutely no, it wouldn't have happened. Maybe that's why I'm not a scientist anymore. That's why I run a university. But I can tell you, this is Nobel laureate kind of work, folks. And I don't want to jinx it, but this is the kind of stuff that we do at Illinois. And this is just one among many such projects that are going on at your university.
And I have to say, it's time for my one little plug for Nick Holonyak. It still makes me mad that he didn't get the Nobel for his first visible LED, because we all know that one should have gone here too, although at least some of his students got part of that one.
Well, and you're talking about something that changed the world. I mean, where would our lives be without LEDs? You know, they're all over the place. I mean, you know, so, but yeah, 24 and counting.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're going to put an asterisk by that one that Nick should have gotten. So yeah. So you talked a little bit about the health sciences innovation in Carl, Illinois, and the ecosystem. Can you give a little bit more information on what all you're seeing, that what we can do, what some of the I mean, you've talked lots of times that we're not talking about a dental school and a pharmacy school. What do you see it looking like, you know, 20 years from now, 30 years from now?
Well, what I'm speaking of to hopefully make it a bit clearer to you is that, you know, we created this innovative medical school that I think is a game changer. And we're working with Carl to create the clinical practice piece of that. That will be the place where the clinical research and the practice plan, you know, where we save lives and we'll have grateful patients. But we will grow our sponsored research program from NIH because of creating this clinical enterprise. But at the same time, we have no plans to, you know, to start a dental school or to start a nursing school. We have the one with UIC right across the street, and it's one of the finest nursing programs in the country. We don't have a school of pharmacy, but we have a lot of expertise in chemistry, and other disciplines that could make us a leader in drug discovery using the expertise that we have and the multidisciplinary approaches we have. We have a school of applied health sciences. We have a vet school that does world-class research in cancer, particularly brain cancer. And we have a 7 Tesla, and not very many universities can tell you that they have that kind of equipment. So my point is, how do you take Carl, Illinois College of Medicine, the other pockets of expertise that we have that is part of healthcare, you know, like the Interdisciplinary Health Sciences Institute, and how do you position them from a point of being technology driven, just like we are driving this College of Medicine based on technology? And you know, we're interviewing candidates for the new dean of Carl, Illinois College of Medicine, and I don't think they would answer in the affirmative just because I'm the person that will have a role in whether or not they're hired, but they all acknowledge that this is a real possibility. The medical school is one thing, but if you just stop with the medical school, you're missing the opportunity to really redesign and to rethink healthcare delivery using our expertise in computing, using our expertise in AI, and using our expertise without creating a whole new typical medical infrastructure, which really does tie you down. We have the blessing of being nimble. We're not encumbered by some of the structural elements, the silos that exist in medical schools. And we think that's going to give us ability to be more nimble, to be focused on data analytics, imaging, and advanced materials, and world-class chemistry departments to really be a leader in drug design and drug discovery and other kinds of health innovations. So, you know, it's kind of hard to describe it because it's never been done before. And that's what makes it so exciting. And that's what we do at Illinois. We do constantly redefine the word impossible.
That's excellent. And we have time for one final question from the audience. And this is kind of an interesting one. As someone who you're the 7th chancellor for whom I have worked. I have never seen a chancellor who gets along so well with provost. I've never seen a chancellor who gets along so well with other chancellors and the president. And here's the question. This is from Douglas Houston. Is there anything new in the UIUC relationship with UIC?
Is there anything new?
Yep. How's your relationship with UIC?
Never been better. I consider Chancellor Emeritus a very close friend. We call each other in a time of crisis. We grab a meal together whenever we get a few breaks to sit, one of them here in Chicago. And they really are. Let me just give you one example. And Michael and I have a very good relationship, and we kind of started out and decided that, you know, we would collaborate where it makes sense, and that we would compete where it makes sense. And the kind of operating principle we have is that I told him, I will never push against anything you want to do, that I would be doing the same thing if I was Chancellor of University of Illinois, Chicago. I'm not duplicitous like that. I just can't operate that way. Let me just give you one example of where we are really working very, very closely. And they're one of our key partners. You know that this state is really exploding with the whole electric vehicle, the autonomous vehicle market is really growing. That state legislation that is going to be bringing more companies to bear on the whole electric vehicle industry. And we really have an opportunity to become a leader in that regard, because we have this autonomous and connected track that we envision building in Robin's backyard there in Rantoul. Maybe it's your front yard, I'm not sure. But Rantoul, the Air Force Base, is going to be the home for the largest, most effective autonomous connected vehicle test track, we think, in the country, if not the world. And one of the few in the Midwest. There are not a lot of these things around, believe it or not. And so University of Illinois Chicago has a lot of expertise in this area, as well as Northwestern, and Governor State. So University of Illinois Chicago, Governor State, and a couple of other places, Wisconsin, I think, are all partnering with our scholars here out of engineering who's driving this thing. And we're actually in the process of hopefully securing some support from the state to allow us to build this thing. It's really going to be fascinating, because what it really, ours is targeted not at cars, but at trucks, semis. The autonomous semi or trucking industry, moving vehicles and moving goods across the country much more effectively in what they call platooning, where you'll have 6 semis running about 6 feet apart, going down the freeway at 75 miles per hour without a driver, and getting off, going to the distribution places to take their loads without a problem. That's the future, folks. And this partnership with the University of Illinois Chicago, using their expertise combined with our expertise in transportation system, roadways, and all of that, embedded sensors, is a prime example of how we compete very rigorously, but we also collaborate with the same kind of rigor. And that's the kind of relationship that we have with the University of Illinois Chicago and others.
Wonderful. And we've about come to the end of our time. So I'm going to ask you a final question. You've talked a little bit about optimism tonight. That's kind of been a theme. It was the theme of your State of the University. And I understand from what you've said that the word optimistic has some special meaning to you. And I think it'd be a nice way to wrap us up and get folks in the holiday mood to talk a little bit about that on a happy note. And I will say, when you finish your answer, we are going to play your holiday greeting for everybody. So please don't end when we stop, folks. Hang on to see the credits roll, if you will. So Robert, tell us about optimism.
Well, this is I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. I think some of you know that I've had an interesting career concurrent with being a scientist, university administrator. I also sang professionally for more than 30 years with a group called the Sounds of Blackness. It's a choral ensemble that we really owe our recording contract to Janet Jackson when Jim and Jam Harris and Terry Lewis, the guys that used to work for Prince's band at the time. Prince fired them. They they were introduced to Janet Jackson, made her the star that she is today. And she really fell in love with our music, encouraged them to give us a record contract. And the group had been around at least a good almost 20 years before I joined. But anyway, one of the first songs, I think it was the second album that they produced, one of the lead song was a song called Be Optimistic. And really has been the soundtrack of my life, you know, being the son of a sharecropper, Southwestern Georgia, being able to get educated to the point that I could get my first job at 26 years old at a major research university, built a successful research career there over 34 and a half years, and ultimately being the senior vice president of that university that became a launching pad. And it's where I kind of got prepared to lead UAlbany as president, and UAlbany was preparation for my ultimate journey to come to this amazing university, University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. And so, given my background and everything that I've had to contend with in life, you have to be optimistic. You have to stay optimistic. And so let me just kind of recite you, not all the verses, but some of the verses.
You can sing
lyrics.
if you like.
No, I'm not going to do that. I'll have to charge union dues if I were to do that. So we won't break the budget. But it goes something like this. When in the midst of sorrow, you can't look up while looking down. A brighter day tomorrow will bring. You hear the voice of reason telling you that this can never be done, no matter how hard realities seem. Just hold on to your dreams. Yeah, don't give up, don't give in, although it seems that you will never win. You will always pass the test as long as you keep your head to the sky. Just be optimistic. And so the other verses are just as beautiful, but let me just end with that. And that is literally was the soundtrack for my life, even before I had the great pleasure of recording this in 1991 with the Grammy Award-winning group, The Sounds of Blackness. And the biggest joy was when we were doing some promotional work in New York, and we went to a very famous African-American restaurant in New York City. And they didn't tell us that they were bringing this person who my favorite actor, never met him in life, but they brought Denzel Washington in to say hello to us. And we all were pretty much floored when Denzel stood up to speak, and he said, I thank you guys. And we go, thank us for what? He said, every day when I'm driving to the studio to film Malcolm X, what do you think I'm playing on the radio? To the studio and back to my house. It's optimistic.
Works for me. Yeah, that's great. Hey, one final comment, not a question, but from Catherine Sproul. She says, thank you, Chancellor Jones, for providing me with the highlights of our university. Sounds of Blackness is amazing. So there you go. We heard it straight from Catherine. And thank you so much for spending the time with us. I know you've had a really, really busy month, and you could have been just resting at your hotel room this evening, and we do appreciate it. And thank you for your leadership. And we will see you tomorrow in Chicago.
Thank you, folks. Have a wonderful evening.
And thank you to Jen Dillevue, president of the UIAA, for hosting the conversation tonight. I think the caption video will be archived on the web in coming days, so we hope you'll share that link with anybody who couldn't join us this evening. We want to thank you to our colleagues at The Strange Road for providing production assistance tonight. And thank you to everybody who joined us this evening. We are so blessed to have one of the largest, most enthusiastic, most supportive alumni bases anywhere on the planet and all the way around the world. So hello again to China. It was so good to see you tonight. This does conclude our program, but again, we thought we might want to leave you with something to get you in the holiday spirit. So we are now going to ask our friends at The Strange Road to roll the holiday greeting from Chancellor Jones, and everybody have a wonderful holiday season. Thank you.
For me, the one that sticks out most in my mind is kind of antithetical to the whole notion of the holiday season being the time to give gifts and time to celebrate, because of the very devastating impact that a little creature called a boll weevil had upon the cotton production in the Deep South during my childhood. It left all of the cotton farmers in deep devastation, and my father was a sharecropper, and to make one bale of cotton off of 14 acres was quite devastating. My mom didn't have the money to go out and buy the gifts that she normally would buy, and what she did was utilized her talent as a baker and just made all of our favorite dishes and some of the most delicious food that one could ever think of. And the time that we spent together as a family, I come from a family of singers, singing songs and just really being grateful for what we had, because there were so many other people in my community who didn't have anything at all. No matter how dire the situation might appear to be, there's always many blessings that we should be grateful for. Well, given all that we've had to contend with in the last 20 months or so, I'd just like to take this opportunity to wish each and every member of the Illinois family, domestically and globally, all the best of the holiday season, and particular peace, love, and joy. And just enjoy the benefits and the pleasure of being together.